Well, thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak tonight. My name is Caryn Voland. I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate Admissions at Georgetown Law in Washington, D.C. And it's great to be able to connect with a group like Women Inside Trade, which helps lawyers advance their careers in a lot of different ways. And that's the goal of our LL.M program as well. So I'd like to say a little bit about doing an LL.M program in general, and coming to the United States, some of the reasons you might consider doing an LL.M in the United States compared to other parts of the world, which also offer LL.M programs. And because this group has a focus on trade law, I'll include some specific information about trade and international business and the relevant programs that we offer at Georgetown, because Georgetown has for a long time been a school with a lot of opportunities and classes and professors focused on trade and international business. I will also talk a bit about the different LL.M programs that we offer, how they're structured, some of the services that you get at an LL.M program like ours, like career services and advising, externship opportunities, and then how, if you decide to do an LL.M, how do you go about applying for it? So to help me with the question of why do an LL.M, and also a little bit why you might start thinking about Georgetown, I have asked somebody from the world of international trade, Professor Jennifer Hillman, she's not able to be here in person, but she has recorded a little introduction, and I'll turn it over to her on video now to talk to you about why do an LL.M.
Greetings to you, and my regrets that I cannot be with you in person, as Brazil would be such an exciting place to be. My name is Jennifer Hillman, and I'm a professor at the Georgetown Law School, where I am right now located just down the street from the United States Capitol, the Supreme Court, and so much more. I'm delighted to have this chance to talk with you briefly about studying and practicing international trade law, a field that I got into almost 40 years ago, right out of law school, and at a time when the formal study of trade law wasn't even in the curriculum of most law schools. I spent my first 2 years in private practice, cutting my teeth, doing anti-dumping and countervailing duty cases, which was a great way to start, since those cases allow you to work intensely with a team of people that usually include senior lawyers, plus economists, and so many more. But for me, I always knew that I wanted to be in public service. So as soon as I had the chance, I left the private practice to work in the United States Senate, where I had the chance to be a part of a team working on major pieces of international trade legislation, which fundamentally changed many of the trade laws here in the United States and many of our practices. Then when Bill Clinton was elected president of the United States, I saw another chance to move into the executive branch and to move to our United States Trade Representative's office, where I was proud to serve as our chief textile negotiator, which meant lots of travel and the pressure to conclude agreements with 46 countries in less than 9 months, while also serving as part of the team that negotiated our North American Free Trade Agreement, our NAFTA, and the Uruguay round that led to the creation of the WTO. I then went on to be the general counsel at USTR, so I was involved in almost every initial piece of litigation under the NAFTA and under the WTO. Little did I know that things would end up coming very much full circle for me when 9 years late, when after serving for 9 years as a commissioner at the International Trade Commission, I would end up at the WTO, serving as a member of its appellate body. It's my hope that I bring all of that experience and knowledge to the classes that I now have the privilege to be teaching at Georgetown Law. And I'm always thrilled to see a significant number of LL.M students or Master of Law students in my classes. Having LL.Ms from around the world, as Georgetown does, enriches every single class discussion and the life around the law school in so many ways. So why might doing an LL.M make sense for you? First, I would say many international transactions involve US law. So even if you're not practicing in the United States, knowledge of US law often comes in very handy. In addition, US law often serves as a model for or as a contrast for other countries. So knowing US law can give you a competitive advantage. Thirdly, I'd say, studying for an LLM here in the United States gives you the chance to improve your legal English skills. It also gives you an opportunity to specialize in particular area of law, be it tax or trade or securities or competition or many others. Thirdly, I'd say an awful lot of students that do the LLM at Georgetown come in, they take classes in the fall and the spring and graduate in May, then study for June and July, and then take a bar exam, often the New York bar exam. So you're getting that extra credential of being admitted to the bar. And studying an LLM, getting an LLM degree gives you the opportunity, the right to sit for the bar. And then many students take advantage of a second thing that you get, which is an other professional training or OPT visa that allows you to stay in the United States for another year and pursue an externship or again, a regular working position, a job in the United States for that next year period. And if you decide that you want to do an LLM in the United States, I would say Georgetown may very well be the perfect place for you. First, we have a very large LLM program with more than 600 students, and international LLM students play a huge role in that, with students from more than 70 countries mixed in with students from the United States as well. 100 student clubs and organizations, more than 40,000 alumni around the world to sort of go back to and connect up to once you graduate, more than 325 classes in international law alone, more than 30 classes just in the international investment and investment arbitration space, nearly 18 classes in the international trade law space alone. So multiple clinical opportunities and practicum experiences for you in this space, along with with two centers or institutes that I'll mention. One is our Institute on International Economic Law that brings together faculty, students, and events in our 4 pillars: international trade, international investment, international tax, and international finance. It's a great way to get engaged with scholars from around the country and the world and other students that are also interested in international economic law. And the second one I'll mention is the brand new one that I had the opportunity to co-found with my colleague, Caryn Voland, another professor here at Georgetown, called the Center on Inclusive Trade and Development. We are trying to look at the trading system and all of the shifts going on in it and figure out what is a trading system that will really work for all and work in the 21st century. So we're trying to look at the trading system from the top-down kind of rules-based system of the WTO, as well as from the bottom up of what is really working for people on the ground, and hope that we meet in the middle with sort of an intellectual underpinning for a trading system for the 21st century. We're starting out looking at gender and inclusive trade and digital trade. We're start out looking at the connection between trade and climate change. We're starting looking at WTO reform efforts, and we're starting by advancing a lot of the work that we have been doing in partnership with the United Nations. We'd love to have you come to Georgetown and get involved in that work. So again, we have a very large dedicated faculty in this space that are drawn not only from our permanent faculty, but from adjuncts from across Washington, D.C. So if you come here, you may very well be in a class that's taught by a senior official at the World Bank or the Securities and Exchange Commission or the United States International Trade Commission. So it's a great chance to be engaged in the trade policy community throughout the city of Washington. We also have a hugely extensive externship program. So you could come to Georgetown and end up externing at the World Bank or the IMF or the IFC or the Inter-American Development Bank or any number of other institutions. We also have something really unique here at Georgetown in that we have a dedicated graduate student career office. So we have a career office that is dedicated just to helping you as an LLM graduate student find that right externship or the best way to use that OPT visa or the way to get, again, engaged in the practice of law in some way in the United States. So if you are interested in international trade or international economic law more broadly, Georgetown may be a great fit for you. I know I'd love to have you join us here. This is a vibrant, happy, engaging place for so many like you. And if you do, I hope you will consider coming to Georgetown. I hope that you will look me up. I hope that you will get engaged in the work and the teaching that I and others in this field are doing. So I wish you a wonderful conference in Brazil. And again, I hope you'll take a real look or consider the idea of doing an LLM here at Georgetown. I'd love to be on the receiving end and we'll be here to greet you if you come. Thank you.
So that was my virtual assistant, Professor Hillman, who I can tell from that video is really a great person to have on our law faculty. And she just represents the kind of professors that we like to have who, in spite of being really busy and at the top of their field, teach because they want to and because they want to share their knowledge with students and help you further your career. So I will build on what she has said. We can switch to the next slide. The next one and probably the next one. Okay, here we go. So a lot of this Professor Hillman already mentioned. Some of the reasons why you might be thinking about doing an LLM and doing an LLM in the US in particular. But I wanted to highlight a bit some of these points that she made and expand on them a little bit. One would be the opportunity to specialize. So people sometimes want to know when in their career to do the LLM, and that answer is different for everybody given different circumstances. But I would say that typically students coming from Brazil come after they've gotten some work experience, at least the type of traineeships that most of you do during your law studies, but oftentimes after a couple of years working in a law firm or in some other law job. And therefore, you may have an idea of specializing during your LLM or really building up a broader and deeper understanding of a particular area of law. And one thing that is characteristic of US law schools is that in many LLM programs, and especially at a larger school like Georgetown, which is one of the bigger LLM programs, you can choose the classes that you want to take. It's not usually a predetermined menu of classes. So you may be in the same degree program as your friend, but you may be focusing on competition law or compliance or something like that, while your friend is focused on international arbitration or trade and selecting from a really long list of classes that you put together with the help of academic advisors if you need to make it into the program that you want. This might be your last academic opportunity in your career, and it's a big investment for you. So our goal is to make sure you get out of it what you want, and that it brings you further down the road that you're planning for yourself. The other thing that she didn't explicitly mention, but some of the things that Professor Hillman said relate to what I call the intangible personal and professional benefits of the LLM year. And that is related to the fact that we have students coming from all over the world going into this unknown, living in a new place where they might not know anybody else, and studying together in a demanding program, but learning from each other, learning that you can explain Brazilian law in English to a Chinese lawyer, or that you have a very similar niche area of interest to somebody from Germany. Maybe there's a connection there that you can take with you when you go back home and are building up your practice. And I've seen that so many times, our alumni connecting with each other within their own countries and across the world to build those connections that are gonna enhance your career and your personal life. And we've got so many stories. I was just speaking to some people here about the fact that I met one of our alumni yesterday who's headed this evening to Europe to attend the wedding of a Greek student and a Peruvian student who met at the LLM 4 years ago. So that's We have those stories often, as well as the ones where people form law firms with their classmates or connect firms that are in totally different parts of the world. So I think that's a really important asset that will go on to, will come back, even if you've forgotten what you learned in your intellectual property class, you still have your friends and your colleagues as really, I think, an asset that comes out of the LL.M program. Yes, you can go on. So I mentioned briefly when is the best time to do the LL.M, and I won't do too much more on it, but I think it works for different people at different times. I think the advantage for students who have some work experience is that you've had a break from school, and so maybe now you're ready for a break from your work environment. You want to experience a new city, you want to get a new perspective, and you want to develop your knowledge and skills in a way that is going to enhance your career. So you know what you want out of it, you appreciate being in school again, and I think having that work experience can be really helpful. At the same time, if you're somebody who's maybe really hasn't decided yet what kind of law you want to practice, the LL.M could be a good time to continue to try different areas and also build up your legal English skills, your networking, learn more about how to do a good interview, all those kinds of things if you're just coming from your first degree. So ultimately that question is a personal one. I remember one thing also that Professor Hillman said that I'll go back to before I forget, which is legal English. I think one of the other skills that's really important to get out of an LL.M is legal English, meaning not just knowing what the terms translate as from one language into English, but also how US lawyers think about the law and talk and write about the law, because they use a really very specific format and an approach to questions and answers that's even different from other disciplines in the US. And I know that all of the students who come to us, having already gotten their law degree, practice law, you are very good writers and explainers of Brazilian law in the format that you've learned it here. But learning the way that US lawyers think about the law, the way they put together arguments, the kinds of answers that they're looking for if they ask you a question, I think that can be really helpful if you're somebody who's going to be interacting a lot with American clients or lawyers in your work. And if you work with US law as well, to know how to, because in a common law system, it might be written down, but the interpretation is more of a common law process of understanding, how you figure out what does this statute mean is a little bit different than what you've been used to. So that's really important as well. Okay. And can you push the thing one more time because a picture will appear here. So Professor Hillman talked a lot about Washington, but just to give you a little visual, most people are familiar with Washington and these scenes and the Capitol building here. So this building right here is Union Station, which is the main train station, and Georgetown Law is right here. So just outside the frame of this picture. And I think it gives you a good idea of the feeling that we are really surrounded by the physical institutions that are making and discussing and applying law in the United States. So I think our campus is just steeped in that atmosphere of the importance of law. And it's not only US law, but there are so many bodies with headquarters or offices in Washington that Professor Hillman mentioned, IMF, World Bank, Inter-American Development Bank. Those are all affecting international law and policy as well. So it's a very international city, it's a very American city, but a great place to study law, to experience it through externships, or to just live for a time outside of your own place. So I'll just say about the externships, that's a kind of a unique feature. Not all LL.M programs offer the ability to do an externship, but you can do it as one of your classes during the second semester of your LL.M. So you would earn course credit for it and for working 10 to 20 hours a week for any kind of legal employer in the Washington area. So that may be one of the international organizations. It could be a law firm. We have students who may intern with judges in different courts around the area, or who may work for accounting firms if they're specializing in tax. So really, as long as you are working for a lawyer and they are giving you the kind of work that lawyers do, it's not an internship where you're answering the phone and making copies, it's real stuff. It's a great opportunity to get that experience and put that on your resume, expand your network even further if you're not planning to or are not able to stay for the optional practical training, the OPT, that comes in the year after the LL.M program. And we also, by virtue of being in Washington, those adjunct faculty members and other people, a lot of them have government experience. Many of our professors are well-known and are called on. You'll hear them on the radio. Professor Hillman, every time all of these trade things with China were going on, I kept hearing her on the radio. Professor Gostin is our global health expert who has been quoted many times over the course of the COVID pandemic. So it's really an exciting place because things are happening all the time. Excuse me. And we do have lots of different degree programs to choose from. So depending on how focused you want to be, there are different ways to do that. Our general LL.M is still the most popular LL.M that we have because it's the most flexible, and you can tailor that to really meet any interest that you want, and have flexibility to not have to worry about getting X number of credits here and X number of credits there. Within the general LL.M, a lot of people might choose to specialize by adding a certificate, which is not extra work or extra money or time, but it means that you've concentrated your course selections to focus on one of those areas. So to graduate from the LL.M, you need 20 to 24 credits. Certificate is 10 credits within that. So this group may be interested in our WTO and trade law certificate. We also have the international arbitration and dispute resolution, human rights, international tax, securities and financial law, health law certificates, and then refugees and humanitarian emergencies. So all of these, have their current events that make them interesting and important. You don't have to do one with the general LL.M, but some people choose to do that as a way of specializing. International legal studies and international business and economic law are also very popular and very flexible. You take about, I think, 12 credits or 14 credits, depending if it's ILS or IBL, we call them, in that specialized area, again, with a lot of choice as to how you obtain those credits, and the other credits you can take in any area that you want, including more specialization credits. So those three are the easiest if you want to combine the New York bar requirements with your studies. With the specialized ones, the New York bar can be a little bit more complicated, but it's often doable, especially if you come during our summer program. So then our specialized programs, I'll just run through: environmental and energy law, national and global health law, national security, tax, technology law and policy is our newest LL.M. And you can see that many of these are kind of cross-cutting too. There's a lot of overlap between, because everything is international and globalized now, between tech law and national security, tech law and health, environment, trade, all of these things coincide. So it's also great because your classmates who are specializing in other areas can give you their perspective, how it relates to your area of expertise. Okay. And Professor Hillman mentioned two of our centers and institutes. Centers and institutes just means that there is a group of faculty and researchers and fellows and students, depending on the structure of the center or institute, focused on a particular area of the law, and that there's always research, writing, events, things, press releases, things going on in that area. So if you're interested in one of the topics that's being addressed by Center and Institute, it's a great idea to get on their mailing list and learn more about the kinds of events and policies and everything that they're involved in. I did bring some one-pagers for the Institute of International Economic Law, which is more of the trade-focused international business. So you can take that if you want. And I'm also pretty excited about the new one that Professor Hillman mentioned with Professor Kuhlman, the Institute for Inclusive Trade and Development. I think that's pretty exciting. And they are both experts and very approachable people. Professor Kuhlman has worked with a lot of our students also during the OPT year to find some work that they can do in the US. Okay. So I think I will, let's see, yeah, next. And we do have alumni all over the world. We have quite a nice alumni network here in Brazil, in Sao Paulo and Rio and in other cities around the country. And that's great to become a part of that for many reasons. We also have law alumni boards. So we've asked some of our senior alumni in different regions of the world to advise us on the legal market, what kinds of areas are important, what kind of skills and classes do our students need to be getting so that they will be ready to jump right in and do a great job when they get back to their country. So that's helped us a lot and I think keeps us relevant and we listen to what people say. That's kind of the technology law and policy grew out of that in part. So the alumni are great. I think my next slide is going to be to invite one of these alumni to come up and share her experience at Georgetown quickly. Yes, would you please? And just ask her to say a few words because I think it's always helpful to hear from someone who's gone through the experience and how it impacted your career. So, sure, thank you for letting me put you on the spot.
Well, for me, Georgetown was actually a great opportunity to focus a little bit more on what I was focusing my career on, which was compliance work and white collar crime. I think that fits one of the profiles of LL.M students that come from Brazil. It was really a great opportunity not only to focus my studies, but also to grow a network out of those studies. One thing that we were briefly discussing shortly before we started the presentation was from that network actually came a work opportunity to work through my OPT at an American law firm, which was not only an amazing opportunity to really understand and apply what I had learned during the LL.M year, but also to really further my connections with people at the law firm, which I carry to this day, which is something that I really appreciate and I wouldn't have gotten had I not gone to Georgetown and done an LL.M. Another thing that I think is really important about the LL.M, but also the LL.M in Georgetown and in DC is that, well, maybe I'm biased because I went to Georgetown, but I think it's the best school in the area, for sure. That's why I went to it, but also because it is within such a major city and such a major city for a variety of different subjects. A lot of the very important practitioners from those areas of law and expertise are there, so you're able to learn from them on the spot. And even if they're not particularly teaching at Georgetown, it's so much easier for you to just send an email, connect with them, have a coffee, and really, develop a relationship afterwards. So I think being able to do that in Georgetown was something that I found to be an asset, which I think I couldn't have done had I chosen to go to a university where I didn't have such a strong international community, and an international community that was so focused on, for example, the areas that I wanted to study, which was compliance. I think that's the same in a way for trade, because it is such a hot topic within DC. And just briefly touching on the externship, it's something that I was particularly proud of, and excited about doing. I got to do my externship at the Federal Trade Commission, which was honestly an amazing opportunity to not only work within the American government, which I think is sort of unique if you're a foreigner, but also really to understand how an agency, an American agency works and develops their own relationship with other foreign agencies in the world, which is something that the Federal Trade Commission does very often. So if any of you have any questions, or people in the at home watching, feel free to connect with me if you have any other questions, or if you want to know more or have any thoughts and comments.
Thank you. Compliance is one of those areas that we are also looking to develop further, so yes. All right. And I do want to say that wherever you end up doing an LLM, don't be afraid of your professors or people that you meet. Take advantage of networking opportunities, because the people who participate in those, they do it because they want to help you. And your professors teach because they want to teach you and they want to help you too. So don't be worried about asking questions, about getting their advice, about inviting them for lunch. That's something that will really enhance your experience. So I think now I've convinced everyone that they should do an LLM. So what should you do next? I'll just briefly talk about the application process so that you know what the steps are, know how to plan ahead for that, and some of the other things you'll need to do before the LLM. So the application process can take some time, but it's not that complicated. It's mostly just forcing yourself to collect all of the pieces and send them in. Most schools are using an online application through the LSAC, the Law School Admissions Council, because it enables you to apply to more than one school without having to obtain many copies of your official transcripts and translations and all of that. You can get it once, send it to this place, and then they will distribute copies to all the schools where you're applying. So you do have to create an account, which costs something with the LSAC, and then I think you have to pay them to distribute your stuff. But I think ultimately it's probably worth it to avoid all of collecting multiple translations and everything. Most schools are all going to require very similar information in the application. In addition, of course, to your official transcripts and diplomas and things like that, you will be asked for letters of recommendation. Those can be from employers or from professors, from somebody that you've worked closely enough with that they can say something meaningful about your abilities and your potential as either a student or a lawyer or both. You will also be asked to write a personal statement. And a personal statement or a letter of motivation for Georgetown, our question basically just says, describe why you are applying to our LL1 program and how you see it fitting into your career path. Some schools may have different or more specific questions that they want you to ask. But overall, what the admissions committee is looking for in those essays is something that they can't see just by looking at your grades and your resume. So what is motivating you? How do you see this fitting into your path? Why are you excited about an LLM? Anything like that. There's no right answer. Just be sure you write well and don't make it too long. Usually I would say 2 to 3 pages is probably sufficient for a personal statement. So it can be longer if it needs to, but just don't worry about it making it extremely long or anything. Then you will need to take an English test as well. So we accept both the TOEFL test or the IELTS test. Most schools do accept those, and some schools are accepting other tests because COVID made IELTS and TOEFL harder to take. We still prefer TOEFL or IELTS, but we will accept their at-home versions that they developed, at least for now, during the COVID process. We look for a minimum score of 100 points on the TOEFL or 7.5 on IELTS. And then we also need, what else? Letter of recommendation, application transcripts. I think that's everything. So all of that can be submitted through LSAC, and we have rolling admissions at Georgetown, meaning we accept applications over several months from October until the springtime, and we read and make offers of admission throughout that time. But other schools may have more of a fixed or a hard deadline. So if that's the case, you just want to make sure you know you need to get it in by a certain time. Okay. Financing of the LL.M is a big piece of deciding whether or not to go. So as you think about applying, also start to think about how you will make that happen financially. I think everybody knows that studying in the United States is the most expensive higher education in the world, as far as I know. But there are a lot of different ways to bring that cost down through scholarships offered by the university, sometimes from the Fulbright Foundation, which is US government sponsored scholarships. And they differ from country to country. Off the top of my head, I don't remember whether Fulbright in Brazil sponsors LL.M students, but in many countries they do. And there may be other private foundations for entities. There may be some law firms who will provide some loans if you're planning to come back to the law firm after. So ask around. You can also ask people who have gone before if they have suggestions of how to make that happen, because it is significant investment of money and time, but hopefully will pay off dividends in many different ways that you aren't even aware of at this point. So it does take planning, and you can always ask the schools too about scholarship opportunities. We have several different scholarships available at Georgetown. And this will be true of other schools as well, that some may relate to specific areas of study and others may be just general merit-based scholarships. So we have specific ones for people studying tax, arbitration, for people who may have participated in that Jackson moot court, formerly known as the ELSA moot court. We offer a couple of half tuition scholarships a year to people who have reached the final rounds of that competition, so you can note that in your application. We have some for environmental and global health students, but the vast majority of the scholarships that we give out are general merit-based scholarships. You don't need to do anything extra to apply for them. We just look at your application overall, and based on the strength of the applications, we will make scholarship offers to a number of admitted students. Those are usually partial tuition scholarships, so you still have to go. But as I said, never hesitate to ask the schools. People always ask us, and we'll answer you. And that's true about any questions that you have. Most admissions people are helpful and friendly, hopefully. So if they're not, maybe you don't want to go to that school, but we always want to help answer your questions and make the process as easy as possible. So I will stop there. I don't know if we have any questions, but I'm also giving my email address here, both the general office email address and my direct email. So anyone who's watching this later, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions about Georgetown, about LL.Ms in general, and would love to hear from you. So thank you. Oh, good, we have one question.
Caryn,
Yes.
I see that you have the summer experience for foreign students.
Yes.
Does it grant credits? Are those credits eligible for the bar? How does it
Great
work?
question. Yes, so we do have an optional summer program for students coming into the LL.M. It's called the Summer Experience, and it's divided into two parts. The first is 2 weeks called or is it 3 weeks? Foundations of American Law. And that class introduces you to the basic structure of the US legal system, helps you to prepare for the type of assignments and preparation that you'll be needing to do for your classes. And it does count as 2 credits towards both your LL.M and the requirement for New York bar eligibility for a basic class in the US legal system. The second half is also optional, and you could take either professional responsibility or US legal research, analysis, and writing. One of those, each one is worth 2 credits and also count towards some of the New York bar requirements. And then even if you do the summer experience, you still can take the maximum number of credits during the academic year. You do pay a fee for the summer experience, but it's less than it would cost to pay for 4 extra credits. So it is generally worthwhile in terms of giving yourself more flexibility during the year if you want to take the New York bar, and also just getting comfortable before everything starts in the fall and meeting some of your students, learning to navigate the city, all of those things that take time that'll be nice to do in the summer and a little crazier to do once the semester starts. So that's a very good question. Yes. Other questions?
Sorry to be late.
Oh, no problem.
I was so anxious to see the whole talk, but it's very nice. I would like to know a little bit more about the scholarships. The merit one, I don't know what involves what you evaluate and you check like
Yes.
the whole application. So here in Brazil, it's very difficult to have this in universities. It's more common to see like something related to, I don't know, like the color and ethical and other things that is not just merit. So I don't know if like Georgetown will consider like this course that we had in the university, our statements, our recommendations. So I would like to have a little bit more details what your goals,
Absolutely, and also this meeting is being recorded, so you'll get the opportunity to watch the whole thing later, so
Thank you.
that'll be great. Yeah, so that's a good question. So for our general merit-based scholarships, we have students from all over the world. So we don't have a specific GPA number or something because that's different in every country. But we will look at, we understand the relative strength of different GPAs within each country. So we look for people who have attended great schools, who have done well there, who may have some professional experience that's builds up your resume a little bit more. We really look at the whole application. I mean, and we also would take into consideration sort of the person's eagerness to attend Georgetown. So if we can, sometimes you can tell from the way the application is written that somebody's not that interested in Georgetown and other people seem more interested, then that would be a helpful factor as well, but not the only factor. And just the amount of the scholarship can depend as well. So sometimes, well, it depends on some of the ones that are like the subject area ones like tax, some of those can be up to full tuition. For our general merit scholarships, they don't, we aren't able to provide full tuition, but some of them could be half tuition or a little bit more than half. Some could be a little bit less than half, but we try to make them good enough to provide significant help, even though we aren't able to offer much in the way of full tuition scholarships. Another thing to keep in mind is that we do have that rolling admissions process. So the earlier you apply, the sooner you will be considered for scholarships. And oftentimes when it gets to the end of the cycle, the money is spent. So sooner is better for our scholarship process. And one thing that's different at Georgetown still, even though we have that rolling process, a lot of schools will include your scholarship offer in your admission letter. We do ours separately. So people will be admitted and it won't say anything about scholarship, but that will come later. And sometimes people are like, I was admitted a long time ago and I haven't heard anything, then we'll try to update them. But generally, we try to kind of spread it out over time and not make people wait too long to find out. Does that help?
Perfect.
Good.
So I have a follow-up question on that. So these are the scholarships of the law school. Do you have, for example, So that in other universities where you have law schools fundings, but then you have an international office funding where you can have, like, for example, the other 50% of tuition, or in Georgetown is everything together and you don't have this?
We don't have another office.
Okay.
Yeah, we only have the ones that come through
Okay, and
the law center.
And then, if I want to search a funding in the US, do you have any support on, do you provide any kind of support for students that are looking for this kind of, like, additional funding in the US?
We used to maintain like a list of other scholarships that we were aware of, but it was very hard to keep that up to date. So we don't have a lot of information about other things. We will post, for example, the OAS, the Organization of American States, they have a loan that's available to students from Latin America. So we'll post information about that.
Even loans?
Yes, and we know we have information about a couple of different loan companies that loan to international students who want to study in the United States. You know, that whole process has been challenging this year because of the whole economic situation in the world, and some of those loan companies haven't been as helpful as they have been in the past. So that's been a challenge. But anytime we find out about something specific, we'll put it on our admitted student website, and then on our public facing website, we have information about the scholarships that are always available. And then we have some that are merit-based, but also may have some component, like we have an alum who donated money for people who went to law school in Croatia, right? So if we don't have anything like that for Brazilians at the moment. We're gonna talk to our alumni about that and see if then maybe we'll start a fund of that sort. But if we do get something like that, we will post.
But do you think also on the alumni, the Latin alumni board, do you think they could be a source of helpful information on searching for funding and the kind of loans that they reached out while they were?
Yeah, possibly. I think maybe we have the board, we also have alumni and student ambassadors. So the student ambassadors are recent or current students. They might be a better source of information because they've just gone through it than some people that graduated like 5 years ago or something. Yeah.
And then how do you reach them at the website?
So yeah, for the ambassadors, we usually connect with students after they've been admitted. So we have like a password protected website for admitted students. But a lot of schools will be able to connect you with their alumni. So that is a good source of also, like, how do I find an apartment in Washington or things like that.
Yeah. I have another question.
Yes.
I know that some universities, I don't know if, like, I studied law here in Brazil, and I did a master, and I'm looking at the United States also opportunities to do the PhD.
Okay.
So I know that, like, for a law school, this is not the similar that are in different. So if I would like to do, like, to study in education, here to do a PhD, I think it's easier than to do it for the law school, because I think it's more common for international studies to do the LL.M. So I don't know if you know, like, much about other programs or other, like, graduation opportunities that we could have, because since I have a master here in Brazil, like, I'm just getting to the end of the process. And I would like to know if, like, it's possible, it's a great idea to do other programs at Georgetown that are not only the LL.M. Looking to the law university, the law college, the structure inside law, not other.
Right. So I guess it depends on what your goal is, what you want to get out of your graduate studies in the US. So if you want to continue as a lawyer, then I think the LL.M. is, even though you've done a master's degree here, the LL.M. is a different experience and a different purpose and structure and results, will be different. If you want to become an academic and you want to write and teach about the law, then at the law school and other law schools, the more doctoral PhD level degree is called either an SJD or JSD. And that's like a 3 to 5 year undertaking involving writing a dissertation and doing research. We have a very small SJD program, and some schools will require you to first do their LL.M and then go on into the SJD. And we also look for an LL.M in the United States before the SJD. I don't really know very much about PhD studies in other disciplines. So at the law school, that's all that we offer. But the university as a whole, of course, has many other graduate
No, but
degrees.
this was my doubt, like if I
Yeah.
had to do the LLM, this is very common, like
Yes.
university, because you have like to be aware of the system that is different from other countries.
Yes.
To then do the PhD.
Right. Yeah, good. Yes. Anything else you think I should clarify or discuss?
So I think it was excellent, Caryn, and also if someone else has any doubts, it can reach you through email.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
even with us, if we can help, we can put you in contact with the person as well.
Yeah.
And on behalf of the organization, Women Inside Trade, I'd like to thank you so much for coming and for giving us this presentation. I think it was very helpful.
Thank you for inviting me,
Interesting.
and I think for trade lawyers, that LLM is really, really important because you will just build that international network and perspective and just open up your opportunities to do that work.
Yeah, and actually I did both, so I completely assure you it's completely different. The master from the LLM, so it's
Great.
completely agree with what you said. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.